I stood in my living room, staring at the empty spot on the mantel where my grandmother's locket should have been, and my heart dropped right into my stomach, like I just missed a step on a staircase. It wasn't just some piece of jewelry, you know? It was a gold locket, heavy and warm, with these delicate roses engraved on the front, holding a tiny, faded photo of my grandparents on their wedding day in 1923. That locket had been in our family for generations. My grandmother wore it through the Great Depression, my mom through the war years, and then it came to me when I turned 18. I'd polished it, kept it safe, planning to pass it to my son, Michael, for his wife, Sarah, when they had their first kid. It was our history, our story, etched in gold. So when I saw that bare spot on the mantel, where a little velvet box used to sit, I felt like someone had ripped a hole in my chest. I tried to stay calm, figuring maybe I'd misplaced it. I checked the drawer in the hall table, the jewelry box in my bedroom, even the kitchen junk drawer where odds and ends pile up. Nothing. My hands started shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed Michael. He's 30 now, my only kid, married to Sarah for 2 years. I've always tried to give them space, not be the overbearing mom, but this was different. "Michael, honey," I said when he picked up, my voice wobbling more than I wanted, "where's Grandma's locket?" "It's not on the mantel." There was a long pause, the kind that tells you bad news is coming. "Mom, Sarah thought it was junk," he said, his voice low, like he was afraid to say it. "She threw it out." Threw it out. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the edge of the couch to keep from falling. "Threw it out," I repeated, my voice cracking like old glass. "Michael, that's our family heirloom. How could she?" He mumbled something about Sarah cleaning house, saying she didn't know it was important, that it looked old and worthless. I pressed him, my heart racing. "When? Where'd she take it?" He hesitated, then said, "Last week, Mom. She put it in a bag with some old dishes and stuff. It's probably at the dump by now." The dump. I felt like I'd been punched. I demanded to know more, but he just kept apologizing, saying Sarah didn't mean it, that he'd talked to her. I hung up, my hands trembling so bad I could barely hold the phone. The room spun, and I sank onto the couch, staring at that empty mantel. Sarah thought she could toss out my family's history like it was trash. Oh, she had no idea what she'd just done. I sat there for a while, trying to wrap my head around it. That locket wasn't just gold, it was my grandmother's courage, wearing it through hard times, passing it to my mom, who'd clutch it when she prayed for my dad to come home from the war. It was me, wearing it at my wedding to Tom, feeling their strength in its weight around my neck. Tom's been gone 5 years now, cancer taking him too soon, and that locket was one of the last pieces of him, of us, that I could still touch. Michael knew that. He'd seen me hold it, tell stories about it, promise it to him for his future family. And Sarah, his wife, had thrown it out like it was nothing. My blood boiled, but something else stirred too, a spark of determination. I wasn't going to let this go. Not without a fight. I grabbed my keys and drove to Michael and Sarah's house, my old Ford pickup rattling like it was as mad as I was. Their place was across town, a shiny new house in a gated community, all white fences and perfect lawns. Michael's an engineer, does well for himself, but Sarah's the one who pushed for the big house, the fancy cars. I tried to like her, really, but she always had this way of looking at me like I was some small-town relic who didn't belong in her polished world. I pulled into their driveway, the anger building with every step to the front door. Sarah answered, her blonde hair pulled back, wearing yoga pants and a tight tank top, like she just stepped out of a fitness magazine. "Eleanor," she said, her smile all teeth, "what's up?" Didn't expect you. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Where's my locket, Sarah? I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. The house smelled like lavender candles, and everything was spotless: marble counters, gleaming floors, a big TV on the wall. She blinked, like she didn't know what I was talking about, then shrugged. Oh, that old thing. I was cleaning out the guest room, and it looked like junk, so I tossed it with some other stuff. No big deal, right? No big deal. I felt like she'd slapped me across the face. That was my grandmother's locket, I said, my voice shaking with rage. It's been in our family for generations. How could you throw it out? Sarah rolled her eyes, leaning against the counter like I was being dramatic. Eleanor, it was falling apart, all tarnished and scratched. I figured you wouldn't miss it. You've got plenty of other stuff. Her words hit like gasoline on a fire. Plenty of other stuff? That locket was my history, my heart, and she treated it like garbage. I spotted a pile of trash bags by the garage door, probably waiting for pickup. Is it in there? I asked, pointing. She shrugged again, sipping her coffee. Maybe. I don't know. It's gone, okay? Let it go. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood what she'd done, but I held it together. I walked to the bags, my hands shaking as I opened one, digging through old clothes and broken dishes. Nothing. Just trash. I turned back to her, my voice low but sharp. You had no right, Sarah. No right at all. She crossed her arms, her smirk fading just a bit. Look, I didn't know it was some big family thing. Michael never said anything. Maybe talk to him. Blaming Michael? Typical. I knew he wasn't innocent, he should have stopped her, but Sarah was the one who'd tossed it without a second thought. I left without another word, my mind racing. Those trash bags were a dead end, but I wasn't giving up. That locket was out there, and I was going to find it. And when I did, Sarah was going to learn exactly what she'd tried to throw away. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Tom and I used to plan our life, where Michael used to do his homework. I pulled up a photo of the locket on my phone, one I'd taken last year, the gold catching the light, the roses etched so fine you could almost smell them. I stared at it, my chest tight with grief and anger. I'd always known the locket was special, but I'd never thought to have it appraised. It was priceless to me, not for money but for what it meant. Still, something nagged at me. My grandmother used to say it was one of a kind, made by some fancy jeweler in the old days. I called Clara, an old friend who runs an antique shop downtown. Clara, I said, my voice steadier now, I need a favor. Can you look at a picture of a locket and tell me what you know? She didn't hesitate. Send it over, Ellie. I'll see what I can find. I emailed her the photo, my hands still shaking as I hit send. Within an hour, Clara called back, her voice practically buzzing. Eleanor, this isn't just any locket. It's a rare piece from a 19th century jeweler, probably worth $2 million, maybe more at auction. Where is it? I froze, my breath catching. $2 million? My grandmother's locket, the one Sarah called junk, was worth a fortune. I told Clara what happened, my words tumbling out, Sarah throwing it out, Michael's apology, the trash bags. Don't tell anyone, I said. I need to find it first. Clara promised to keep it quiet and start calling pawn shops and dumps, anywhere it might have ended up. I hung up, my mind spinning. Sarah had no idea what she'd done, but she was about to find out. I wasn't just a mom with a broken heart, I was Eleanor Carter, and I was going to take back what was mine. I hung up the phone with Clara, my heart still racing from her words, $2 million, maybe more. My grandmother's locket, the one Sarah had tossed out like yesterday's trash, was worth a fortune. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the photo on my phone, the gold locket with its delicate rose engravings, the tiny photo of my grandparents tucked inside. Clara's promise to track it down echoed in my mind, but so did Sarah's smug voice. It was junk, Eleanor. Let it go. Junk. My blood boiled all over again. That locket wasn't just gold, it was my family's story, from my grandmother's hardscrabble days to my mom's quiet strength, to me wearing it at my wedding to Tom. And Sarah, my son's wife, had thrown it away without a second thought. I wasn't just mad, I was done playing nice. She thought she could disrespect me and my family. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I grabbed my keys, the weight of Clara's call fueling me like a shot of adrenaline. I needed to see Sarah again, to look her in the eye and figure out just how far her carelessness, or maybe her spite, went. My old Ford pickup rattled as I drove back to Michael and Sarah's fancy house across town, the same gated community I'd left just hours ago. The whole way, I kept replaying our last conversation, her eye roll, her shrug, that infuriating no big deal attitude. I'd checked those trash bags by their garage, digging through old clothes and broken dishes, but the locket wasn't there. If it was at the dump, like Michael said, I'd have to move fast. But first, I needed answers. Sarah wasn't going to brush me off again. I pulled into their driveway, the manicured lawn and white picket fence looking like something out of a magazine. Michael's engineering job paid well, but Sarah was the one who'd pushed for this place, always chasing the next shiny thing. I tried to like her, really, but her little comments, calling my house quaint, sniffing at my homemade casseroles, always made me feel like I didn't measure up in her world. I knocked on the door, my hands clenched to keep them from shaking. Sarah answered, still in her yoga pants and tank top, her blonde hair now in a messy bun. "Eleanor, back already," she said, her smile tight, like she was annoyed I was interrupting her day. "What's this about?" I stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation. The house smelled like lavender, same as before, but now it felt fake, like a cover for something uglier. "We need to talk about the locket, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but sharp. She sighed, shutting the door and crossing her arms. "God, you're still on that. I told you, it was old and gross. I threw it out when I was cleaning the guest room. Can we drop it?" Her words hit like a slap, but I kept my cool, leaning against the marble counter. "You threw out my grandmother's locket," I said, locking eyes with her. "It's been in my family for generations. You didn't think to ask me? Or Michael?" Sarah rolled her eyes, grabbing a bottle of sparkling water from the fridge. "Look, Eleanor, I was doing you a favor. That thing was falling apart, tarnished, scratched, probably worth nothing. Michael never said it was important, so I figured it was just clutter." Clutter. I wanted to scream. That locket was my history, my heart, and she was acting like it was some thrift store junk. I glanced at the pile of trash bags still by the garage door, visible through the kitchen window. "You sure it's gone?" I asked, pointing. "Because I checked those bags, and it wasn't there." Sarah shrugged, sipping her water. "I don't know, maybe it went to the dump already. Why do you care so much? It's just a locket." Her flippant tone lit a fire in me, but I held it together, my mind racing. Clara's call about the locket's value, $2 million, maybe more, flashed in my head. I couldn't let Sarah know yet, not until I had it back in my hands. If she got even a whiff of its worth, she'd probably tear the dump apart herself to claim it. "It's not just a locket," I said, my voice low but firm. "It's my family. My grandmother wore it through the Depression, my mom through the war. I wore it when I married Tom. You had no right to throw it out. Sarah's smirk faded, just for a second, like she sensed she'd crossed a line. But then she doubled down, tossing her hair. Well, Michael didn't stop me. Maybe you should talk to him. He's the one who said you're too sentimental about old stuff. Blaming Michael? That was low, even for her. I knew he wasn't blameless, he should have told her what the locket meant, but Sarah was the one who tossed it without a care. I stepped closer, my voice like steel. Don't put this on my son. You made the choice to throw out something that wasn't yours. You're going to help me find it. She laughed, short and sharp. Find it? It's gone, Eleanor. The trash truck came days ago. Good luck digging through the dump. Her words were meant to cut, but they only made me more determined. I turned to the trash bags again, my hands itching to rip them open one more time, just in case. We'll see about that, I said, heading for the garage. I tore into the bags, the smell of old food and damp cardboard hitting me as I sifted through junk, broken mugs, stained towels, a cracked picture frame. Sarah followed, leaning in the doorway, watching me like I was some crazy old lady. You're wasting your time, she said, checking her phone like she had better things to do. I ignored her, my hands moving faster, but the locket wasn't there. My heart sank, but I wasn't giving up. If it was at the dump, I'd call Clara, get her contacts to search every pile. If it was at a pawn shop, I'd track it down. I stood, wiping my hands on my jeans, and faced Sarah. This isn't over, I said. You disrespected my family, and I'm going to make this right. She raised an eyebrow, her smirk back in full force. Whatever, Eleanor. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Let it go. Let it go. Not a chance. I left without another word, climbing into my pickup, the engine sputtering as I pulled out of their perfect little neighborhood. Back home, I called Clara again. Any leads? I asked. She was already on it, her voice calm but focused. I've got calls out to every pawn shop in town and a contact at the county dump. If that locket's out there, we'll find it. But Ellie, you sure you want to keep this quiet? If Sarah finds out what it's worth, I cut her off. She doesn't get to know. Not yet. I want that locket back first. Clara agreed, promising to update me by morning. I sat at my kitchen table, the photo of the locket still on my phone. The roses, the gold, the tiny photo of my grandparents, it was all I had left of them, of Tom, of the life we'd built. Sarah thought she could erase that, but she didn't know me. I wasn't just some small-town mom clinging to the past. I was Eleanor Carter, and I'd spent my life fighting for what mattered, raising Michael on my own after Tom died, keeping our family's story alive. That locket was worth millions, but to me, it was priceless. And I was going to get it back, no matter what it took. Sarah would learn soon enough, you don't mess with a woman's legacy. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Tom and I used to dream up our future, my phone screen glowing with the photo of my grandmother's locket. The gold, the etched roses, the tiny photo of my grandparents inside, it was all I could see as Sarah's voice echoed in my head. It was junk, Eleanor. Let it go. Junk. My hands shook as I gripped my coffee mug, Clara's words from yesterday ringing louder than ever. $2 million, maybe more. That locket, the one Sarah had tossed out like it was nothing, was worth a fortune, and she didn't have a clue. I told Clara to keep it quiet and start searching pawn shops, dumps, anywhere it might have ended up. But as I sat there, staring at that photo, the weight of it all hit me. This wasn't just about getting the locket back. It was about my family, my history, and showing Sarah she couldn't erase us. I wasn't just some sentimental old lady, I was Eleanor Carter, and I was going to take back what was mine. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the table. I hadn't slept much, my mind churning with memories of the locket, my grandmother wearing it as she told stories of scraping by during the Depression, my mom clutching it when she prayed for Dad to come home from the war, me feeling its weight around my neck on my wedding day to Tom. It was our legacy, passed down through generations, and I'd meant to give it to Michael for his future kids. Sarah had thrown it out without a second thought, and her smug no-big-deal attitude from yesterday burned in my chest like a coal. I'd checked those trash bags at her house, digging through garbage while she watched with that smirk, but the locket wasn't there. If it was at the dump, like Michael said, time was running out. I needed to move fast, and I needed to be smart. I called Clara again, my voice steadier than I felt. "Any leads on the locket?" I asked, skipping the small talk. Clara's voice was all business, but I could hear the excitement underneath. "I've got something, Ellie. I called a few pawn shops last night, and one downtown, Eddie's Pawn, says they got a locket matching your description a few days ago. Gold, rose engravings, old photo inside. The guy who brought it in said he found it in a trash haul. I told Eddie to hold it, but he's antsy. Wants $500 to keep it off the floor." My heart leaped, then sank. $500 wasn't much, but the idea of paying for my own heirloom stung. "Tell him I'm coming today," I said. "And Clara, don't let anyone know what it's worth. Especially not Sarah or Michael." Clara agreed, her tone serious. "I've got your back, Ellie. But you sure you want to keep this quiet? If Sarah finds out it's worth millions, she'll be all over it." I clenched my jaw. "That's why she doesn't get to know. Not until I've got it in my hands." I hung up, my mind racing. $2 million. I still couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd always known the locket was special. My grandmother used to say it was one of a kind, made by some fancy jeweler in the 1800s, but I'd never thought to have it appraised. It was priceless to me for what it meant, not what it could buy. Now, knowing its value, I felt a new kind of responsibility. That locket wasn't just my family's past, it was their future, and I wasn't about to let Sarah's carelessness destroy it. I drove to Eddie's Pawn, my old pickup rattling through the streets of our small town. The shop was tucked between a diner and a laundromat, its neon sign flickering in the daylight. Inside, it smelled like dust and old leather, shelves packed with guitars, watches, and random knickknacks. Eddie, a wiry guy with a grey ponytail, was behind the counter, polishing a ring. "You Eleanor?" he asked, squinting at me. I nodded, pulling up the photo on my phone. "You've got my locket." He reached under the counter, pulling out a small velvet box. My breath caught as he opened it. There it was, gold, roses, the tiny clasp I knew so well. I reached for it, my hands trembling, but Eddie pulled it back. $500, he said. Guy who brought it in said he found it in a trash haul from that fancy neighborhood across town. I could sell it for more, but your friend Clara's a regular. I swallowed my anger, writing him a check. The locket was mine again, safe in my hands, its weight familiar and comforting. I opened it, checking the photo inside, my grandparents, young and smiling, untouched. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick. Eddie shrugged, already back to his ring. I left, clutching the locket, relief mixing with rage. Sarah had thrown this out, called it junk, and now I held $2 million in my palm. But I wasn't ready to tell her, not yet. She needed to understand what she'd done, and I needed to make sure she'd never touch my family's legacy again. Back home, I called Clara to confirm I'd gotten the locket. "You're lucky, Ellie," she said. "That trash haul was headed for the landfill tomorrow. Another day, and it'd be gone." I thanked her, my mind already shifting to the next step. The locket was safe, but Sarah's disrespect wasn't. I needed to know more about why she'd tossed it. Was it really just a mistake, or was there something else going on? I pulled up Michael's number, hesitating. He'd sounded sorry on the phone, but he hadn't stopped Sarah. I texted him instead, "Found the locket. We need to talk. Come over tomorrow, alone." He replied instantly, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'll be there." Sorry wasn't enough, but it was a start. That night, I sat on my couch, the locket in my hands, its gold catching the lamplight. I opened it, staring at my grandparents' faces, their love frozen in time. I thought of Tom, how he'd tease me about wearing it, saying I looked like royalty. He'd been gone 5 years, but holding the locket felt like holding him. Sarah had tried to erase that, and I wasn't going to let her off easy. I called my lawyer, Diane, a tough woman who'd helped me settle Tom's estate. "I need to protect something valuable," I said, keeping the details vague. "Can you set up a trust for an heirloom, make it untouchable?" Diane didn't ask questions. "Give me the details, and I'll have it ready by tomorrow." I hung up, a plan forming. Sarah thought she could throw out my family's history, but she didn't know who I was. I was Eleanor Carter, and I'd spent my life fighting for what mattered. That locket was my legacy, and I was going to make sure it stayed that way. I held the locket in my hand, its gold warm against my palm, the rose engravings catching the morning light as I stood in my kitchen. I'd gotten it back from Eddie's pawn shop yesterday, paying $500 to reclaim what Sarah had tossed out like garbage. Clara's words still echoed, $2 million, maybe more at auction. That locket, my grandmother's, my mother's, mine, was a fortune, and Sarah had called it junk. I'd told Clara to keep it quiet, and I'd texted Michael to come over today, alone, to talk about what happened. But as I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Tom and I used to plan our life, I knew this wasn't just about Michael. Sarah needed to face what she'd done, and I needed to make sure she'd never touch my family's legacy again. I wasn't just Eleanor Carter, the mom who made casseroles. I was a woman who'd fought for everything I had, and I was done letting Sarah walk all over me. I decided to invite them both for dinner, figuring a neutral setting might keep things civil, at least at first. I called Michael, keeping my voice sweet as pie. "Honey, bring Sarah over tonight. I found the locket, and we need to clear the air." He sounded relieved, like he thought this was all behind us. "Thanks, Mom. I'm so sorry about everything. We'll be there." Sorry wasn't going to cut it, not after Sarah's smirk and her let-it-go nonsense yesterday. I spent the day preparing, not just the meal, lasagna, garlic bread, a simple salad, but my plan. I'd called Diane, my lawyer, last night to set up a trust for the locket's value, making sure it'd be protected for Michael's future kids, out of Sarah's reach. Diane had emailed a draft, and I'd printed it, along with Clara's appraisal certificate confirming the locket's $2 million value. They were in a folder by my side, ready for the right moment. By evening, the house smelled like tomato sauce and fresh bread, the table set with my good plates. I placed the locket back on the mantel, its velvet box open so it gleamed under the living room light. When Michael and Sarah arrived, I greeted them at the door, my smile tight but polite. Michael looked uneasy, his dark hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. Sarah, though, was all polished perfection, designer dress, red lipstick, blonde hair swept up like she was walking a runway. "Eleanor, this smells amazing," she said, her voice dripping with fake warmth. I nodded, gesturing to the table. "Let's eat," I said, keeping my tone even. We sat, and I let them talk, Michael about his work, Sarah about some charity gala she was planning. I nodded along, serving lasagna, waiting for the right moment. After dessert apple pie I'd baked that morning, I cleared the plates and set the folder on the table, along with the photo of the locket from my phone. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you sure you threw this out?" I tapped the photo, watching her face. She glanced at it, then shrugged, her lips curling into that familiar smirk. "Yeah, I told you, it was trash. Tarnished, old, falling apart. Why are you still obsessing over it?" Michael shifted in his seat, his eyes darting between us. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said. "I should have told her it was important." I held up a hand, stopping him. "You should have, Michael." But Sarah made the choice to throw it out. Without asking. Without caring. Sarah rolled her eyes, leaning back in her chair. "God, Eleanor, it was a mistake, okay? I was cleaning out the guest room, and it looked like junk. You've got to stop making this a big deal." Her words were like gasoline on a fire, but I kept my cool, reaching for the folder. "A mistake," I said, sliding the appraisal certificate across the table. "This is what you threw out, Sarah. A locket worth $2 million. Maybe more." Sarah's smirk vanished, her face going white as a sheet. Michael choked on his coffee, grabbing the certificate. $2 million, he stammered, his eyes scanning the paper. "Mom, is this real?" I nodded, leaning forward. "It's real. That locket's a rare piece from a 19th century jeweler. My grandmother's, my mother's, mine. And you, Sarah, tossed it in the trash like it was nothing." Sarah's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. She tried to laugh, but it came out weak, almost panicked. "You're joking, right? That thing. $2 million? I didn't blink. I got it back yesterday. Cost me $500 at a pawn shop. The guy who found it in your trash haul thought he'd hit the jackpot. But it's mine, and it's staying that way." Michael's face was a mix of shock and guilt, his hands shaking as he set the certificate down. "Mom, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell us it was worth that much?" I looked at him, my heart aching but my resolve firm. "Because it wasn't about the money, Michael. It was about our family, our history. You knew that, but you let Sarah throw it away." Sarah's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. "Don't put this on me. Michael never said it was some big heirloom. I was just cleaning." I raised an eyebrow, pulling out a printout of her text to a friend, one Clara had found through a contact. "Eleanor's old junk is clogging up the house. Tossed some of it. She'll get over it." I slid it across the table. "You knew exactly what you were doing, Sarah." She froze, her face red, but she didn't deny it. Michael grabbed the paper, his jaw tightening. "Sarah, you said that?" he asked, his voice low. She shrugged, tossing her hair. "It was a joke, Michael." "God, you're both so dramatic." I leaned back, folding my hands. "Dramatic? You threw out a $2 million heirloom because you thought it was old junk. You disrespected my family, Sarah. That's not a joke." Michael looked at her, then at me, his eyes full of regret. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have stopped her." I nodded, my voice softening just a fraction. "You should have. But we're not done." I stood, walking to the mantel where the locket sat, its gold gleaming like a beacon. I got it back, I said, picking it up. But I'm making sure this never happens again. I handed Michael the trust documents from Diane, explaining how the locket's value was now locked in a trust for his future kids, untouchable by Sarah. Her eyes widened, her hands twitching like she wanted to grab the locket herself. You can't do that, she snapped. That's not fair. I smiled, cold and sharp. Fair? You threw out my family's legacy. You don't get to decide what's fair. Sarah stood, her chair scraping the floor, and stormed toward the door. This is ridiculous, she muttered. Michael grabbed her arm, his voice quiet but firm. Sarah, stop. You messed up. We need to fix this. She yanked free, glaring at me. You're just a bitter old lady, Eleanor. Holding on to the past. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. Maybe, I said. But this bitter old lady just saved a $2 million heirloom you called trash. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges for theft. She froze, her face pale, then stormed out, slamming the door. Michael stayed, his head bowed. I'll make this right, Mom, he whispered. I nodded, my heart heavy but my resolve unbreakable. The locket was back, but Sarah wasn't done. I'd be ready for her next move. Sarah's slam of the front door still echoed in my ears as I stood in my dining room, the locket gleaming on the mantel like a silent witness to the storm that had just blown through. Michael sat at the table, his head bowed, the trust documents and appraisal certificate spread out in front of him. I'd just dropped the bomb. The locket Sarah had tossed out like trash was worth $2 million, maybe more, and I'd locked its value in a trust for his future kids, out of her reach. Her parting shot, calling me a bitter old lady, stung, but it only fueled my resolve. I'd gotten the locket back from a pawn shop for $500, but this wasn't over. Sarah had disrespected my family, my history, and I wasn't going to let her walk away thinking she'd won. I was Eleanor Carter, and I'd spent my life fighting for what mattered. This was the reckoning, and I was going to see it through. I looked at Michael, his face pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Mom, he whispered, his voice raw, I had no idea it was worth that much. I'm so sorry. Sorry was a start, but it didn't erase the fact that he'd let Sarah throw out our family's legacy. I sat across from him, the folder of evidence, Sarah's texts, the appraisal, the trust documents still open between us. Michael, I said, keeping my voice steady, you knew that locket meant something to me. To us. Why didn't you stop her? He rubbed his face, his eyes red. I didn't know she was going to throw it out. She was cleaning the guest room, and she said it was just old junk. I should have checked, Mom. I messed up. His words hit hard, a mix of guilt and love twisting in my chest. Michael was my boy, the one who'd clung to me after Tom died, who'd promised to make me proud. But he'd let Sarah run the show, and now we were here. You did mess up, I said, my tone firm but softer than before. But you're my son, and I want to fix this. Together. I slid the trust documents toward him, pointing to the clause that locked the locket's value away for his future children. This ensures the locket stays in our family, for your kids, not Sarah's control. You understand why I had to do this? He nodded, his eyes fixed on the paper. Yeah. She doesn't get it. She doesn't get us. I leaned back, the weight of the night settling over me. Sarah's reaction, her shock, her anger, that desperate grab for control, told me she wasn't done. A woman like her, used to getting her way, wouldn't let $2 million slip through her fingers without a fight. I'd already called Diane, my lawyer, after getting the locket back, and she'd finalized the trust, making it ironclad. But I needed to know more about Sarah's actions, to make sure she couldn't come after us. I called Clara, my antique shop friend, who'd helped me track down the locket. Clara, I said, any chance you can dig into Sarah? Anything off about her? Clara's voice was sharp. Already on it, Ellie. I heard from a contact at the pawn shop Sarah's been in there before, selling old jewelry. Might not be related, but I'll keep digging. My stomach tightened. Selling jewelry? Was Sarah more calculating than I thought? The next morning, I met Diane at her office downtown, a small space packed with law books and files. I handed her the folder, Sarah's texts, the appraisal, everything. I want to protect the locket, I said. And I want to know if Sarah can cause trouble. Diane flipped through the papers, her eyes narrowing. The trust is airtight, she said. The locket's value is protected for Michael's kids, and Sarah can't touch it. But these texts, she knew the locket was yours and threw it out anyway. That's reckless, maybe even intentional. We could file a civil suit for damages, maybe even push for theft if you want to go hard. I thought about it, my mind flashing to Sarah's smirk. Not yet, I said. But keep the option open. By afternoon, Clara called with a bombshell. Ellie, you're not gonna believe this. My contact at the pawn shop says Sarah sold a ring last month, said it was family junk from Michael's side. I checked the description, it sounds like your mom's old sapphire ring. My heart stopped. That ring was another heirloom, one I'd left at Michael's house for safekeeping. Sarah hadn't just thrown out the locket, she was systematically getting rid of my family's treasures. Find out if it's still there, I said, my voice shaking. And don't let Sarah know we're onto her. Clara promised to move fast, and I hung up, fury burning through me. This wasn't a mistake. Sarah was targeting my family's legacy, piece by piece. I called Michael, telling him to come over that evening, alone. He showed up, looking like he hadn't slept, his eyes red and his shoulders slumped. I led him to the living room, the locket still on the mantel, its gold gleaming under the light. Mom, he said, his voice breaking, Sarah's been acting weird since last night. She's mad about the trust, says you're trying to control us. I nodded, gesturing to the couch. Sit. We need to talk about her. I told him about the sapphire ring, about Sarah's visits to the pawn shop. His face went pale, his hands clenching. She told me she was selling her own stuff to pay for the gala. I didn't know, Mom. I swear. I believed him, but belief wasn't enough. Michael, I said, Sarah's been lying to you. She's not just careless, she's getting rid of our family's history. The locket, the ring, who knows what else. I handed him a new document from Diane, a legal notice demanding Sarah return any other heirlooms or face a lawsuit. You're going to give this to her, I said. And you're going to make a choice. Your family, or her. He took the paper, his hands shaking. I love her, Mom, he whispered. But I don't know if I can trust her anymore. That night, Clara called again. The sapphire ring was gone, sold to a collector, but she tracked down the buyer, who agreed to sell it back for $1,000. I sent the money, my heart heavy but my resolve firm. The locket was safe, the ring was on its way, and the trust protected them both. The next day, Michael called, his voice steady for the first time. I gave Sarah the notice, he said. She's moving out. I told her we're done. I closed my eyes, relief and sadness mixing. You did the right thing, I said. Come home anytime, honey. I stood by the mantel, the locket in my hands, its weight grounding me. Sarah had tried to erase my family, but she'd failed. The locket, the ring, our story, they were safe, locked away for Michael's kids. I'd shown her who I was, Eleanor Carter, a woman who doesn't let go of what matters. As I closed the locket, my grandparents' faces smiling up at me, I felt Tom's presence, his pride. Nobody, not even my daughter-in-law, could take that away.